Joining us are Tammy Weitzman and Doug Turpin to talk a little bit about the situation that have been going on. Of course, Doug Turpin is with the Coalition for Liberty. Tammy, this is an incredibly mess, and I know it's difficult to summarize, but first, tell us a little bit about what you did on the day today in regards to cancer and oncology social work.
Sure. So, first of all, thanks for having us, Tony. Um, so, I've been an oncology social worker, a cancer social worker for about 20, almost 23 years. And throughout my career, first of all, I was impacted by cancer at a very young age. I lost my father at the age of 5, come from quite a medical family, and knew very early on in my schooling that this was something that I wanted to at least try to do. And once I knew that I could do this, I never wavered. I have worked in every area of oncology, but focused the vast majority of my career in hematology oncology and stem cell bone marrow transplantation. I had a very clinical role, meaning I did actual counseling and therapy with patients and their families. There were other folks on the team who were able to ensure that these patients had enough resources, a place to stay, gas money to get to clinic for their
Right.
appointments. But my role was a very clinical role, and it was really in tandem with my hematology oncologists, nurses, PAs, and I was very much embedded in my teams and saw patients every single day, 5 days a week.
So your work over these many years eventually led you to the Seattle Cancer Care Alliance in 2016, and that's when
Correct.
things started to go well. Downhill doesn't quite do it justice. So why don't you tell me about some of the craziness that started happening when you hopped on with the Seattle Cancer Care Alliance?
Yeah, so I worked at Seattle Cancer Care Alliance, SCCA as it was known. Today it's known as the Fred Hutch Cancer Center. I had worked at SCCA for 5 years, and I would say 4 out of those 5 years were extraordinarily difficult for me in my career. I was called by two colleagues in particular, Canadian. I was born and raised in Toronto, Canada. I was called a Canadian white bitch who cuts people off. Jewish, so I was called a white kike, which is a derogatory term
Oh
for
my
a
gosh.
Jew. I was harassed over knowing a high-ranking cabinet member in the Trump administration whose daughter, his family member, I was honored to participate in her care of cancer
So
many
so
years ago.
to stop very briefly because this is patently insane. And we're on with Tammy Weitzman, who was bullied and harassed anti-Semitically in the workplace in Seattle, and of course Doug Turpin, also from the Coalition of Liberty. So you were called anti-Semitic slurs. You were harassed for I can, providing some kind of cancer care to someone who was related to someone in the Trump administration, which is is so beyond the realm of any individual's idea of what someone should be harassed for. But please, this isn't even where it stops. Continue.
Yeah, Tony, just one thing to add. It wasn't that she was just harassed, it's that she reported her harassment and she was told just to deal with it, or she was told that she would be punished if she raised the issue. And in
Because
fact, one of the
that's how
times when she
anti-Semitic
did,
slurs
they
that's how
they
anti-Semitic
made her
slurs
go,
work.
yeah, when she would report harassment like this, they would go ahead and make her take a DEI training course because of her lack of sensitivity. It was just beyond the pale of the way that she was treated. It wasn't just that this happened in a workplace, it's that when she would talk about this, they were told her it's no big deal, essentially. Just deal with it.
Amazing. Imagine if we
Yeah.
had that kind of attitude and that kind of an idea towards, again, individuals of other ethnic groups and other faiths in the country called slurs. Oh, just deal with it. That's, it's probably your fault to begin with. After all, officer, her skirt was really short. She was asking for it. My God. I mean, it's just disgusting. Please, Tammy, I know that's not yet it, because this DEI stuff started to infect your work as well, right?
Yes, it did. We had several DEI trainings that were called at the time race and allyship trainings. And I do want to go back for a minute and say that I did report the two incidences to my manager. We did have meetings, separate meetings with the two coworkers, but nothing was really done. And then in return, I was the one. So yes, something was done because I was the one that was made to take a 2-day diversity training course. Had to choose one. I took it. I underwent the training. But we had several DEI trainings over Zoom at the time because it was during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them in particular, I was constantly being scolded by my manager. You're not speaking up. You're not showing interest. You need to speak up in these trainings. So I went out on a limb and I did speak up in one of the trainings, and I said, gee, I do know from a personal perspective what it is like to feel attacked or discriminated. And I told a story of when I was 17 years old at a friend's home, and her parents were very anti-Semitic, and they found out that I was Jewish, and they told my friend to tell me that I had to leave the next day. And of course I did. So when I told this to the group, the two co-facilitators looked and said, it doesn't matter. You're white. You can pass.
I've been in this exact same circumstance, because when I was a science administrator at IPS, I remember being told I'm a federally registered member of the Cherokee tribe, and I remember being told, well, you look white. Phenotypically, you look white. And I'm amazed because, again, in the cases of people who have Italian, Hispanic, Jewish heritages from several different ethnic backgrounds, again, it's no guarantee you're going to come out a particular shade of brown. The entire concept that we're now pulling out the eugenics chart to look at someone and go, well, I need to see your grandparents to tell if you're Jewish enough, or you're black enough, or you're Native American enough. It's beyond insulting. So you go through these racial equity trainings, you're insulted the whole way through, or remedial racism, as it really should be called. Then you get this article sent to you in 2021 that now you have to really start applying DEI and wokeness and political oppression to your counseling relationship with patients that you're seeing. Tell us about that.
So that was the last DEI training that I was part of before my departure. And, it was just a regular DEI training, as they all were, around racism. And this colleague had said that at the conclusion of the training, she had said that she was going to send out an article, some resources, for us to be able to talk about racism with patients and families. And I just want to read the title of the article. The article was an old article when President Trump had just been elected. And the title of the article was How We Are to Use Our Skills and Influence to Resist the Upcoming Trump Administration and the Hatred and the Violence that it Inspires.
Tammy, I have to ask, in your professional expertise and experience here, do you feel that when someone is going through cancer, they're focused on the Trump administration, that what's going through their mind right now, that they're dealing with the greatest challenge of their lives and their family also, that they're really concerned about who's in the White House?
No, they're concerned about their lives. Caring for cancer patients, receiving cancer treatment, working in a cancer hospital, working in any cancer hospital or any medical institution should be an apolitical matter. Period. End of story. I should not have had to be exposed to this. I should not have had to work in an environment that was so political. And I should not be compelled to talk to patients about politics and about President Trump and how evil the left thinks that he is. This is wrong. And yet this is happening everywhere. The
Yes.
lens through which these people see life and see everything is through progressive politics comes before all else. Progressive politics comes before patient care, comes before a staff member sharing their own experience of discrimination.
Hmm.
If you do not subscribe to how they see things, you are out. And I eventually was out because I could not sit comfortably with what I was seeing coming across company email. And I
At the expense of the patients you were expected to see, no less.
absolutely, I would never think to expose or to take these teachings and apply them to patients.
Hmm.
It's unconscionable. Patients walk into a cancer center terrified. They don't know what they're going to hear from their physicians. They're looking for hope. They're in pain. They're sick. I'm not going to talk to them about politics, and I'm not
Right.
going to talk to them about President Trump.
Right. We're also joined by Doug Turpin from Coalition for Liberty, one of the guys heading up this lawsuit over the most clear-cut violation of her First Amendment rights that I've seen in quite some time. So, Doug, tell me, give me a little bit of your perspective on how Tammy was just mistreated through this entire process. Because as a guy who understands First Amendment litigation like you do, there's an entirely different set of things that have to be just putting you on the level with this whole thing.
Yes, when I first started talking with Tammy and reviewing everything that they had done to her, it was just heinous. The idea that you would want to impose woke ideology on somebody struggling for their life. And if you look at the article that she was referencing, it is a step-by-step process for how you're supposed to confront people, aggressively confront them, confront your friends at the dinner table, or confront your family members, confront your patients. The whole point was to intimidate people into succumbing to a woke groupthink ideology. And that is just so wrong. Tammy's a hero. Tammy was simply wanting to treat people in an apolitical manner to try to help them to recover from cancer. That's what her job was. Her job was not supposed to be somebody who was indoctrinating patients at their weakest point in their life. Well, something like that would put such a barrier between a social worker and the patient. So she suffered constant harassment, anti-Semitic behavior, discrimination based on her race, her religion, and a fundamental refusal to adopt an ideology and particularly talk about this with patients. So we're just so happy to be able to represent her. Coalition for Liberty wants to end cancel culture. We believe that it's possible because cancel culture has proliferated in our body politic because there hasn't been any consequences. So if people that practice cancel culture are suddenly held legally to account, if they're committing defamation, slander, libel, if they're firing people for unjust reasons simply because of a difference in political thought, then if they're held to account, they will stop. And we can
Right.
return to a land where we're having civil and respectful discussions. But woke people do not believe that they know they can't win that way. What they want to do is intimidate and cow people because their ideas themselves are not popular.
And that's what I want
So
to dig
if we
into
defeat
here.
cancel culture,
Because the realistic part of where this rubber meets the road for Tammy is that she got absolutely. I don't even have the words really to quantify this. But in Tammy's case, where the cancel culture really hit her, was that the termination. I've read this several times. I've read the document that you've sent over. I've looked at this. I've tried to kind of put into words how I feel about this. But if you don't mind, Tammy, can you tell us a little bit about the quote around your termination, this essence of white privilege thing?
Yeah, so I want to go back to one other incident that I want to tell you about where I was called into my manager's conference room to meet around something. And I was very nervous and I was very worn down and I was very scared. And she ended up having to call the rapid response, which is like the former code blue team,
Mm-hmm.
to come in and assess me because I was on the floor and I was basically in the throes of fainting. And then, and that was just a little bit of how this impacted me. And I really want the listeners to understand how this impacts people. For me, it impacted me emotionally tremendously. But around the termination, Tony, I was essentially told, I was called into a conference room by my manager, and her manager said to me, let's cut right to the chase. We're letting you go. Your ethnicity sensitivity and your core values do not align with our mission and core values. And do you have a ride home?
Tony, just to put some context on this, what happened was that Tammy went to her boss to talk about this article that was sent out
Sure.
and to object to the very concept of having to go talk to patients, friends, coworkers, and to basically confront people. That was what the article was all about. And her manager said, "Well, I'm not going to go ahead and talk to this coworker. You are. You're going to go over and basically talk to this person and explain your concerns." And Tammy said, "Well, that's not my job. That's not what I'm very uncomfortable. This is a very radical social justice warrior, and I'm concerned about that." He said, "Well, I'm directing you to go talk to your coworker." So she did. And the coworker essentially said, "Well, I'm not going to go ahead and agree with anything you think, but we'll be fine. We won't have to carry this any further."
Yeah, I've
We
heard that
And
agree to
before.
so then Tammy
disagree.
went to HR. She went to HR about this, and HR said, "You have absolutely nothing to worry about. We'd never allow any retaliation against you for something like this." A week later, her coworker sent out an email that ended up getting Tammy terminated. And this is shocking. What she put in this email should have had her, at the very least, reprimanded, if not fired, for the racist type of rant that she put in.
Yeah,
But
it's
she
this
copied
email
HR.
that it's this email that just has me livid. So I'm going to read a little bit of
Yeah,
this email on the air here. It says,
yeah.
quote, "It is the essence of white privilege to be able to focus on a tree at the expense of seeing the forest. It is the essence of white fragility to claim victimhood when you are definitely not the victim." Yeah, I'm so sorry, Jews, but you're not allowed to claim being the victim when someone calls you anti-Semitic slurs. "I am disturbed that a white woman," again, not quite, but anywho, "I am disturbed that a white woman on a social work team at a major institution like Seattle Cancer Care would try to play these games, would claim the status of victimhood in the face of a woman of color." Oh, there it is. And it always comes back to that. After the years of the era of Trump. And so that in and of itself is incredibly racist. But of course, if you're in a certain position on the hierarchy of the Pride and Progress flag, you get to make those kind of statements. So, goodness
Yeah. Tony,
gracious.
she even ended it with, she said that she will not privilege Miss Weissman or any white person's perspective or opinion.
Now, that's very open and blatant racism.
Yes. And that got Tammy fired. They went
Yeah,
after
that's about
promising
right.
that they would never allow any retaliation. They promptly brought Tammy in and told her that she was not ethnically sensitive enough. It's just
So
a shocking turn of events.
we're running just a up to a point here where I have to ask, because the lawsuit, again, we're moving forward, we're taking this to task. It's very obvious to me why this was retaliation. I'm not going to insult anyone in this conversation by asking you to explain why you think this was retaliation. 2 + 2 = 4 any day of the week. So maybe I should put it this way. What are you looking for out of this lawsuit? Because there's a lot of different goals. I've worked with teachers that have filed, lawsuits in regards to retaliation across the country, parents regarding school boards. What are you looking for out of this lawsuit against this Seattle organization?
Tammy, in my mind, is a true hero because she's standing up to try to prevent this kind of thing from happening to other people. They took away her dream. Her dream since she was a little girl and seeing her father suffer from cancer was to help cancer patients, and that's all she ever wanted. So they should pay for what they've done. But we're also looking to send a message out there that this is wrong. This type of behavior is not going to be something that organizations, individuals, they can't practice cancel culture and expect that they're any longer going to be getting away with it without consequences. So delivering consequences is how we're going to end cancel culture. So Tammy wants to do her part in speaking up and talking about anti-Semitic, anti-white. It's horrible to discriminate against anyone based on their color, whether they're whatever color they are. It's
Absolutely
wrong, and it needs to stop. There can't be somebody countenancing this kind of behavior and punishing somebody for bringing it to the attention of their superiors.
Right.
Tony, I want to jump in for 1 minute and just say, I was alone in this fight of mine for a very long time. And it wasn't until I found in my hometown of Charlotte the Coalition for Liberty that I felt completely embraced, believed, and most of all, I would say that I felt heard. And if anything, it pains me to believe that there may be someone else like me out there. And there's a lot of organizations. We're beginning to fight back as conservatives right now, right? There's Do No Harm. There's America First Legal. But I would encourage anybody who is unsure what to do, who is feeling very lonely and alone in their fight, just reach out to Doug and his team. They are fantastic, and they will embrace you, and they will help you. And it's because of Doug and his team, really. It's because of the CFL that I'm here today, 100%.